Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So first things first, just want to apologise for the no video last week. If you did read my post that I put up on here, I explained my reasons why. So obviously for those who haven't read it, I posted a video last month just about taking a break. If you follow my channel, you're aware of my circumstances at this current moment. I discussed about the possibility of another move, and that actually happened last week. So that just explains the inactivity. But I am now back, and hopefully, you'll be getting your videos on a weekly basis as before. So, without further ado, we are going to get into the case of Stuart Harling. Also, I want to point out that I done a little bit of extra bonus content for you guys for this video. It's something that I wanted to do with my Stephen Paul case and the Lewis Danes one. So obviously if you watch those videos, you're aware that I discussed that I'm very, very familiar with those areas where those crimes happened. And the area with Stuart Harling is actually my hometown. It's where I grew up, so I know this area like the back of my hand. So I thought I would just go to that area and film a little bit of bonus extra content for you guys. But so with that being said, let's get into the story. So Stuart Harling, he was born in 1988. He grew up in Rainham, Essex, and he lived with his parents and his younger sister. I think his younger sister was like 2 years younger than him. He was described as initially a promising pupil, and he even attended Campion Grammar School in Hornchurch. And however, during his free time, Stuart would just basically shut himself away from any sort of civilization and play on computer games. His particular favourite one of his was a game called Manhunt. And Manhunt is a role-player game which is actually, well, I think the sequel was banned in the UK because of its graphic content. But it's just basically, from what I believe, I never played the game myself, but the player would go around and execute people, and you'd be awarded stars from 1 to 5 based on that execution. He, at the same time, he served as an altar boy at his local church. And after leaving school at 16, Stuart went on to study accountancy at Havering Sixth Form College, which is actually the college that I studied business at. And he was described as having a really bizarre sense of humour, and he had problems interacting with his classmates, his peers, and anyone he was around with at the particular time. His end of term reports focused on his lack of concentration and contributions, but Stuart just ended up skipping all his classes entirely, and he wanted to focus all his attention onto playing Manhunt. And he was said to have been enraged that the sequel was actually banned. So obviously, as I already said, I think the month around the time that Stuart committed his acts, the sequel to Manhunt was banned in the UK, and he was said to have been really, really angry and annoyed at this, and I think this is probably what contributed to him acting out his fantasies. So soon, Stuart just completely isolated himself, and he was putting all his time and efforts into researching serial killers like Dennis Nilsen, Colin Ireland, Richard Ramirez seemed to be a particular favourite one of his. And that's not to just suggest that anyone who has a keen interest in true crime is going to go and perform those sort of acts on anyone they meet. It's just he happens to have that dangerous disposition within his personality. So he would also, at this particular time, he was entering internet chat rooms and he was in conversation with multiple paedophiles. And he began having fantasies about murder, and he started piecing together a murder kit with things that he was purchasing off eBay. This included a set of leather gloves, some sunglasses, an Adidas jacket, and a witch's wig, and a very large hunting knife. And Stuart said that he had been bullied at school, and he described fantasies about a Columbian-style massacre where he would take out his frustrations on the kids that were bullying him. And he basically described how he would get hold of a gun and just pick off these students one by one. Not really much I can say to that. I mean, obviously it's all well and good having fantasies, you know, we all tend to have those sort of dark, intrusive thoughts, but whether or not down to your personality, whether you carry that out or not. And I think most of us, myself included, and most of us that are watching this video or watching any other kind of true crime video, we don't tend to have that. It stays at a sort of fantasy level, and that's where it ends. It begins and ends at fantasy. And I think that's just the difference between a well-adjusted human and someone like Stuart. So he also described another story that he had actually been saved to a secret file on his computer, and it was titled Murder at Upminster Bridge. And this was about the rape and murder of a woman at Upminster train station. Stuart then purchased a CD instruction manual titled Hand-to-Hand Combat and Knife Fighting. He then started taking long walks around Hornchurch Country Park. So for those of you who don't know, Hornchurch Country Park, massive old airfield in, well, obviously in Hornchurch, which is a little town in Essex. My parents used to take me, my brother and sister there when we were a lot younger, when we lived in the area. We used to go over there bike riding, taking the dog for a long run. From what I remember, there was the old World War II bunkers. They were still around. So obviously at the beginning of the video I talked about some exclusive bonus content for you guys. So that bonus content was that I actually went to where this incident happened, which was Hornchurch Country Park. I couldn't actually find the bunkers, but I do really recall very well the bunkers being there, because I remember hiding out in them when I was a kid to jump out of my mum and dad, also, or my brother and my sister. I think I even remember some other incidents, but I digress. So he would go around Hornchurch Country Park. He would just basically doing dry runs of his fantasies. So stalking through the bushes and just maybe possibly jumping out at any sort of unsuspecting suspect. I think a lot of people that go to Hornchurch Country Park, they tend to have their wits about them. They have to. It's a very wooded area, very heavy thicket bushes. Sorry. So it's very difficult to see around there, especially when it's quite dim, because obviously there's no artificial light, so you're relying on natural light, so you kind of find it difficult to see where you are going or see who's in front of you. So Stuart spent most of his time while he was stalking Hornchurch Country Park. He was reveling in the idea of being his town's first ever serial killer. Something that he was constantly searching for on the internet was, Essex serial killer, Barking serial killer, Dagenham, Raynham, Hornchurch, and obviously this was a few years way before Stephen Paul. He wasn't getting anything coming up about any sort of feedback on any serial killers around those areas, so he was reveling in the idea that he could be the first. So on the 6th of April 2006, he basically finally put his plans into action, and he come across 32-year-old nurse Cheryl Moss. So a little backstory on Cheryl. So Cheryl was born in 1973 and she lived on Moor Crescent in Dagenham at the time. She had been a nurse at St George's Hospital, Hornchurch, for over 10 years, and she had only just married her husband. I think they had only been married about 18 months prior before her death. And she was described as hardworking, caring, empathetic. I mean, obviously, all the standard traits that you would expect for someone who is in her field. She wanted to be a nurse from a really young age, from all accounts. And so Cheryl and Peter, they at the time were trying to expand their family through IVF. So on the 6th of April 2006, it was a significant day for Cheryl. It was actually her father Terence's birthday, his 61st birthday. And she had planned to have dinner with him after she finished her shift at St George's Hospital. She had texted him that morning, "Happy birthday, Dad. See you later, Shell." And Terence went on to say that he hadn't actually got back to her at that point with a reply in text. And he went on to say that he would never want to celebrate another birthday again. I think we could all kind of empathise with him on that. So I'm just going to pause here for a moment. I'm going to post the edit into the extra content that I filmed for you guys, and then I'll be back and we'll finish. Hey guys, so I thought I'd bring you to the area where the incident happened. So part of the hospital at the back here is still standing, but as you can see, the hospital has actually been knocked down and being built into a housing estate. So just a little background on the hospital. So St George's was opened in 1938, and it was actually in operation for about I think about 70 odd years. Stopped serving as a hospital in October 2012. The reason that the hospital shut down was that workers found Legionella in the water, and Legionella is an infection that can lead to Legionnaire's disease. Don't know if you can see down the back, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. So around here was where Tobacco Alley would be. Now I'm going to take you there. I'm not going to go all the way in because I don't want to disrespect Cheryl's memory, but I'm gonna go have a little look and I will be back with you in a moment. So I don't know if you guys can see, but the whole entire area, the whole perimeter of St George's Park, as it's now known, where the hospital stood, is now completely perimetered off. This fencing goes all the way around. I'm just going to walk up to where what looks like what's left standing of St George's Hospital. to see if there's any sort of memorial or anything dedicated to Cheryl. I really hope that, you know, whoever bought this land didn't take that away. I don't know if there's anyone that I could speak to about it, but I can't see anyone around. I mean, a few cars and whatnot, but that's about it, really. But I just obviously wanted to bring you guys here to Zen Crime. Like I said, I'm not going to take you to the actual spot. I just don't think it's necessary to. I don't think it's necessary to see that kind of thing. Don't want to disrespect, but I would love to see if there was any sort of memorial to Cheryl. But so yeah, so this is what's left of the hospital. It's just the building that's just there. Okay, guys, so I'm now outside what is left of what was St George's Hospital. It now serves as a heritage centre supplied by the RAF. So this area has a long-standing history with World War II. I don't know if you can see the road names of the St George's Park housing estate. A lot of them named after World War II planes. The schools around here, all the house teams are named after World War II planes. So I'm just going to go inside and just have a general inquiry if there was anything that was dedicated to Cheryl, and hopefully they can point me in the right direction. Guys, I am now just in the back entrance of the hospital, or where the hospital used to stand. Just through these bushes is Hornchurch Country Park. This is where Stuart would have been skulking. He would have been walking through here non-stop, going over the events in his head on how he wanted to carry this out. Just going to carry on walking. I do want to see if there is any memorial dedicated to Cheryl. I'm not going to show you the actual site. I'm just going to show you bits where it was leading up. But the guys in the RAF base that I just filmed ended up being really helpful to me, and they actually pointed me the way to go. This is obviously changed quite a fair amount since I last came here, which was a very long time ago. But just coming up to a public footpath, and yeah, I don't think there is anything that's been put up, so I'm just going to stop filming here for a sec, carry on having a little investigative look, and I'll be right back with you. So guys, I've walked all the way through, coming up to a gate just now. So the guys in the RAF base basically told me that there were plans for a memorial to be put up in honour of Cheryl. They weren't sure if those plans were going to go through, obviously, with the new housing development, but anything that was in place, like any sort of plaque, it looks like it's been removed, sadly. So I'm just gonna stop off for lunch somewhere, and I'm gonna see if I can get through to Havering Council. See if there's anyone there that can point me in the right direction. But like I said, I just wanted to bring you guys here so I can actually show you what used to be the hospital. But you can obviously look on Google, look up St George's Hospital, Hornchurch. You can have a look at how the building used to look. So yeah, I'm just going to piece all this together and insert, and yeah, I will let you know of any more developments when I speak to the council. So at 10:30 a.m., Cheryl left the ward that she was working on at that particular time, and she basically walked out of the back entrance of the hospital to a little secluded area called Tobacco Alley, and that was just to have a very quick 5 minute cigarette break. And she was actually on the phone to her mother at that particular time. So Stuart watched her and he waited for her to finish her phone call. And when he was definitely sure that she was done with her phone call, he was skulking in the bushes, listening very intently. And when he knew that she said her final goodbyes, he sprung out and began a very frenzied attack on Cheryl. So it was reported that Cheryl had her back towards Stuart, and he sprung out with a hunting knife and began stabbing her in the back, stabbing her in the arm. He reportedly began stabbing her even in the face. So at that point, you can imagine that she's probably fallen down, and Stuart has turned her over and just aimed for her face. It is reported that a couple of the knife blows, or one of the knife blows, had completely fractured and shattered her skull. And it was reported, well, Stuart himself said the only reason that he stopped stabbing Cheryl was because his wig had fallen off at that point, and he hastily just made a really quick, speedy getaway. So he either dumped his bag at this point in the bushes, or in his hurry, he had left it there. It wasn't really clear in the reports of how this had happened. And only a few minutes later, a 17-year-old was walking their dog, and they come across Cheryl's body. And the reports don't specify who this person was, but they notified the hospital quickly, and obviously Cheryl's colleagues had come running out to attend, not knowing how serious the incident had been. So police, they ended up cornering off the crime scene, and they just basically began investigating. Forensics come down, everything was just all roped off, and they knew it wouldn't be easy, as there was absolutely no CCTV in Tobacco Alley. So for them, at that particular point, they're thinking, obviously, how are they going to apprehend the person that did this? And it wasn't until then that they come across Stuart's bag dumped in the bushes, and this was obviously taken away by forensics to be tested. And it was whilst checking the contents, police had their first lead, as Stuart, luckily for the police and stupidly for him, he had actually left a piece of paper in the bag, and this piece of paper contained his home address. So that same day, police arrived at the address and they arrested Stuart, and his electronics were seized. And this is where they found the evidence for all of Stuart's purchases at this point for his murder kit. And they even found the story of the Upminster Bridge attack. And 2 days later, Stuart was charged with Cheryl's murder. So, before he could stand trial, Stuart was assessed by a mental health expert, and he told psychiatrists he basically wanted to become a serial killer after watching a Richard Ramirez documentary. He added that he killed Cheryl because he was just bored. That was the only explanation that he actually gave. He went out and savagely attacked an innocent, hard-working woman simply because he was bored. He said that he felt nothing for Cheryl, and he referred to her as a character of one of his games. And it was at this point it was discussed that Stuart had Asperger's syndrome, which, okay, just a side note here, I really don't agree with this terminology. I don't agree with that sort of, I mean, I wouldn't call it a diagnosis because I didn't 100% say that he had it, but I just really, I don't know. Listening to his story, I just highly doubt that Stuart was anything like that. I just think he had a really dangerous, violent disposition. And the thing is with people with violent dispositions is they tend to live in a almost fantasy-based land. I really don't agree with what the psychiatrist said at all. But I could be wrong. Obviously, I'm not a trained psychologist. But that's just my personal feelings towards his case. But let me get back on track. So, Stuart's trial began at the Old Bailey on the 11th of June 2007, and he denied murdering Cheryl, but said that he was guilty of manslaughter by the grounds of diminished responsibility. A picture of Stuart's profile was put forward in the evidence taken from his computer and his love of the manhunt game. So Stuart began showing bizarre behaviour whilst in court, and he even started questioning and challenging the jurors. He stated that one juror had taken him ice skating, one had gone out and shot his dog, another was actually his local drug dealer. And he went on to say that he blamed his 16-year-old sister for his arrest, as she had apparently grasped on him. Now, you blame yourself for your arrest, Stuart, because you were stupid enough to leave the evidence of your address in your bag. So, when he was asked for further details on Cheryl's murder, Stuart said that he felt absolutely nothing, and he even had the audacity, the nerve, and the audacity to sit there and say that murdering Cheryl had ruined his day. No care or consideration towards, obviously, her family members at this point, particularly her father, whose birthday it was, the day that his daughter died, not considering her mother had only narrowly missed hearing her daughter being attacked. No, he just thinks about himself at this point, and this is why I was discouraging the Asperger's sort of thing. Just absolutely no compassion, no nothing. When he went on to claim that he killed Cheryl as the first part of a planned stage, and this was to stage a coup in Equatorial New Guinea with 150 other people. I'm not gonna lie, I really wasn't sure on what he meant by this. I did try and look into it, but I'm gonna be honest, it really didn't make a wonderful lot of sense to me, so I'm not gonna deliberate on that much further, because I can't really talk about things that don't make that much sense to me. So the court described Cheryl as being only 5'1", and she basically just had no chance of defending herself against Stuart. It was proven that Stuart had injured himself during the attack, so more likely as he was stabbing Cheryl, his hands probably slipped and gone down the blade. He said that was due to him being in the Scouts as a leader. He had fallen over while taking the Scouts out. And it was also proven that Stuart had managed to send threatening letters to the 17-year-old dog walker, who was the one that notified about Cheryl's body. So the jury rejected the claims that he suffered from any sort of mental abnormalities, and they put forward that he was just a cold-blooded killer who lived in a virtual world playing games, watching porn and finding interest in serial killers, in murder and in racism. The point that they put about racism was that I think in the story that Stuart made up about the attack on Mr. Bridge, I think it was said that the woman the story was about happened to be a black woman. But I didn't really want to put that in because I could only find one article that had referenced that title, so I wasn't sure whether to put that in. But obviously, this is coming from the court documents that I can find, so excuse me. That's just obviously why I wanted to clarify why racism was brought up. So the prosecution, they put forward that Stuart had never sought help for any conditions, and he was just basically acting out a violent fantasy in a premeditated attack. When the judge, Mr. Justice Brian Altman, summed up Stuart, he said, "This in itself would have been a cause for concern, but the evil that you put into your research, you put into practice. And Cheryl Moss had the misfortune to stumble across your path. Your destructive and deadly actions have meant very little to you, and what you have gained and what you have sought is infamy. You robbed the community of a vibrant and contributing member of the society." Forensic psychiatrist Dr. Philip Joseph said that "I cannot think of a more dangerous teenager in the country. Harling comes across as a well-balanced, polite individual, which may mean he will be eligible for parole early. On the face of it, there is nothing that will alert you to how dangerous this boy is." After this, it was reported that Stuart threw his paperwork from the dock. So obviously that's just probably an act of defiance or an act of disrespect. He then just basically looked at Brian Altman, so the judge, and he shouted, "I will rip off your head and shit down your neck." Probably a phrase that we're all kind of familiar with. Like if you do end up watching some gangster movies or whatever, that quote has definitely been in films. I've heard it very numerous times throughout my life. But yes, that's probably something that it's just the biggest level of disrespect that you could ever say to someone. So after this outburst, he was then led away from the dogs to the cells, and Cheryl's husband Peter, he ran from the court in tears. So the jury went away to deliberate, and they ended up coming back to give a guilty verdict of 10-1 on murder. So that basically means 10 of them agreed that he was guilty of murder. Only one of them wasn't too sure. They probably persuaded on the manslaughter on grounds of diminished responsibility that Stuart tried to claim in the beginning of his case. So Stuart was then sentenced to a life imprisonment with a minimum of 20 years, and judging by my calculations, he will be eligible for parole in around 2027. He will be 39 years old. So after his sentence, Peter spoke out and said that this is just a waste of a beautiful life, and he called for the judge to reconsider and sentence Stuart to a whole life order, adding that this has been a horrific time and we will never truly recover from this. Stuart's mother, Lorraine, she said that she blamed the games for Stuart's actions, and she said I knew he was playing the video games, but I didn't really know what went on in them or how brutal or graphic they were. Stuart was 11 or 12 when I bought the PlayStation for him, and for a long time I didn't realise games had an age limit on them. We'll just buy him the games that other kids were playing. I didn't know what they were about, and I think most parents are the same. I know these games are played by kids all over the world, but some are truly horrific, and if they can cause a trigger to be pulled in someone's head, then they should be banned. I'm going to call a little bit of bullshit on that one, because all games, all films, we all know, even if you're old enough to remember CDs, they come with a parental guidance warning, and obviously, particularly films and games, they come with an age certificate on them. So, like 18, 15, 12, so on and so forth. Everyone in the world knows what that certificate means, so I'm just going to call absolute bullshit on that. If you use your eyes, I think what she was potentially doing was she was one of those parents who just couldn't say no to their child, and she just wanted to indulge him in any way, shape, or form. And that's not necessarily to blame Lorraine for what he went out and did. Like, that blame is 100% at Stuart's door. But I just don't agree with that she didn't know that games come with an age restriction. Like I said, we all know that. It's a really common thing in our society. So, after this, more heartbreak followed the family. Cheryl's mother, Greta, so she died in 2008 and struggling to come to terms with her daughter's death. So I couldn't really find any information on this from the documentary that I watched about Cheryl, and the way that this was worded. It made it sound as if that Greta had committed suicide, but I can't really go into much detail because, like I said, I can't find any information on this. In the documentary, I think it was either Cheryl's aunt or her brother, one of them had said that Greta had just basically given up on life, and her heart hadn't recovered. So I'm just drawing my own conclusions on that one, but it could be any sort of reason. I know there is a condition out there, I really can't remember what the condition's called, but it's called broken heart syndrome, and it's where people can basically die from having a broken heart. So obviously that could be possible, but from my understanding of it and how I interpreted their words, to me it just sounded like she took her own life, which is really sad to think about. So in 2014, an article was released after Cheryl's brother Chris, then 49, his home was burgled while he was in Norfolk for a holiday with his daughter Rachel and his wife Nicola. Chris had stayed living in Hornchurch at the time, and he appealed for the thieves to return the items stolen. Among those was jewellery that belonged to Cheryl and Greta. One of these was an 18-inch golden chain with an Alsatian pendant, and this necklace was one of the necklaces that Cheryl was actually wearing on the day she died. Chris said, "It made me feel sick, and it's not about the monetary value. These items are irreplaceable. They are from people no longer here, and they don't have the value to the person that took them. they'll get themselves a few £100 at most, but for me, this is a part of history I cannot replace. And in fact, Greta's necklace, he went on to describe, bore a teddy bear, and this was engraved with Cheryl's name. And Chris added, if somewhere deep down you have a heart, hand those necklaces into the police station or post them through my door. I would be a forgiving person. Chris then went on to speak of Cheryl and Greta and said, you do come to terms with things, but you never truly get over it. And this has really not helped. I feel guilty that I haven't protected them enough. I am kicking myself. So unfortunately, this is basically where I have to end this particular story. I tried to do as much digging as I could because I really wanted to give you guys more in-depth take on this. But it's just one of those things, again, limited resources and whatnot. It's just one of those stories that I really struggle to find a lot of information on. But I hope that I've done my best. And I really hope that you guys tune in. I hope you guys enjoyed the extra content that I did film. As I said, because I knew the area really well, I just wanted to take you guys there to see the area that Cheryl lived in, the area that Cheryl was respected, and the area that Cheryl worked in. Like I said, I did want to do this very similar with Stephen Paul case and the Lewis Danes. It was just time restrictions at that particular time meant I couldn't go back to those areas due to working and a few bits and bobs going on in my life. So yep, I'm just going to end that there. I do apologise, it's only a shorter version than what you guys are used to. But I really hope that I've kind of brought this back to the forefront of your mind, because it's a story that I clearly remember, and that's why I wanted to do it. It's just not one that really gets referenced that much anymore. So I will see you guys at the same time, same place next week with another new case. Stay safe.